That randomness is a mathematical lie. The Milky Way is not drifting through an open, infinite frontier. We have been firmly anchored dead center inside a 2 billion light-year-wide spherical vacuum. The darkness between the constellations is not empty space. It is a biological containment perimeter, and the observation phase is about to end. The foundation of modern astronomy relies entirely on a single mathematical pillar known as the cosmological principle. This is the absolute assumption that, on a grand enough scale, the universe is homogeneous and isotropic. It states that no matter where you are positioned or which direction you point your instruments, the distribution of matter and energy remains exactly the same. We need this principle to be universally true. Without it, the equations of general relativity cannot be applied to the cosmos as a whole, and our entire understanding of cosmic history dissolves into pure guesswork. To prove this uniformity, humanity built machines of unimaginable precision. In 2013, the European Space Agency released the ultimate map of the cosmic microwave background using the Planck satellite. They measured the residual heat of the Big Bang with instruments cooled to a fraction of a degree above absolute zero, eliminating any possible thermal interference. The data was presented to the world as a triumph of human intelligence. The temperature fluctuations across the entire observable sky were minuscule, varying by only 1 part in 100,000. We did not stop at measuring ancient heat. We demanded visual confirmation of this structural perfection. By 2012, the Baryon Oscillation Spectroscopic Survey, a major component of the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, meticulously catalogued the precise coordinates of over 1.5 million galaxies. They mapped a volume of space stretching across billions of light years. The charts they produced were celebrated as the ultimate vindication of our cosmological models. At large enough scales, the clusters of galaxies smoothed out into an elegant, featureless distribution. The Lambda CDM model, our standard blueprint for reality, was cemented as untouchable law. We convinced ourselves that the universe was an endless, uniform ocean of dark matter and ordinary matter. Even when astronomers noticed minor irregularities in the local distribution of galaxies, they quickly rationalized them away. The standard scientific defense is always a matter of perspective. Researchers argue that if you look closely at the ocean from a small boat, you see chaotic, towering waves and unpredictable, violent troughs. But if you observe that same ocean from a commercial jet flying at 30,000 feet, those violent waves average out into a perfectly flat, tranquil mirror. The scientific community insisted that the cosmic web worked exactly the same way. They conceded that there are small voids and dense clusters of stars in our immediate neighborhood, but maintained that on a scale of hundreds of millions of light years, those localized anomalies must cancel each other out. The mathematics demanded that everything would eventually balance perfectly. We clung to this defense mechanism because the alternative was unthinkable. We refused to accept that a localized anomaly could be large enough to break the entire mathematical framework of reality. We found immense psychological comfort in believing that our local patch of stars was absolutely ordinary. This mathematical uniformity gave us the ultimate illusion of safety. The framework is already broken. The waves do not average out. The local density is mathematically impossible. We are not looking at a tranquil ocean. You are not standing on a solid foundation of physics. You are resting on the delicate surface tension of a catastrophic statistical error. When scientists look at the cosmic microwave background and declare the universe is uniform, they are looking at a photograph taken 13.8 billion years ago. It is the fossilized light of a dead era. To assume that our local universe is still perfectly balanced today based on that ancient afterglow is a terrifying act of scientific hubris. A man walking across the center of a massive frozen lake in the dead of winter feels completely secure. The ice beneath his heavy boots is perfectly white, visually uniform, and stretches seamlessly to the horizon. The ice beneath your heavy boots is perfectly white, visually uniform, and stretches seamlessly to the horizon. Your eyes tell you that the surface is completely homogeneous. Every step you take feels secure, because the physical feedback matches your internal expectation of safety. But your senses are only processing the outermost skin of the environment. You cannot see that deep below the surface, massive underwater thermal currents have been silently eroding the frozen structure from the inside out for months. The ice directly beneath your feet is no longer a solid, continuous block. It has been completely hollowed out, leaving only a fragile, millimeter-thin shell suspended over a lightless abyss of freezing water. You feel safe, not because the ground is stable, but because the collapse has not yet reached the soles of your shoes. The cosmological principle is that thin layer of ice. It is a psychological shield designed to protect us from the sheer terror of our actual geographical location in the cosmos. But you do not live inside an average. You live inside a specific, unyielding physical coordinate. The sheer scale of the universe is used as an excuse to ignore the localized rot. We look at the perfectly smooth temperature maps from the Planck satellite, and we breathe a collective sigh of relief. We build museums to celebrate this data, but that light is 13.8 billion years old. It is a ghost. It is the fossilized echo of a universe that no longer exists in that state. You are staring at a childhood photograph of a corpse, desperately convincing yourself that the patient is still breathing in the next room. What happens when the averaging stops? What happens when you are forced to look away from the distant, safe horizon and stare directly at the immediate volume of space surrounding our own skin? The illusion begins to dissolve. The comforting blanket of isotropic matter is violently stripped away, revealing the raw, unedited geometry of our actual neighborhood. You live your life assuming that the space between us and the edge of the observable universe is filled with a steady, reliable scaffolding of stars, gas, and dark matter. You assume that if you travel in any direction, you will encounter the exact same gravitational resistance, the exact same density of reality. You feel anchored. When you sit in your room tonight, surrounded by the physical boundaries of your walls, you feel that the laws of physics are pressing down on you evenly, from all sides, holding you safely in place. That pressure is a lie. The distribution of mass around us is not holding us together. This is the ultimate deception of the human perspective. We project our desperate desire for order onto a system that has absolutely no obligation to be orderly. The universe does not care about our models. It does not care about the elegant equations we write on blackboards to make the endless dark feel less hostile. The concept of everywhere is the same is a mathematical sedative. It is a drug we injected into our own scientific culture to avoid facing the structural isolation of our existence. The freezing water beneath the ice is absolutely silent. The ice does not scream before it gives way. The ice does not scream before it gives way. It does not send out a warning signal. It simply ceases to support your weight. The cosmological principle is exactly the same. It will not announce its own death. It will simply fail to explain the anomalies. We were so obsessed with measuring the distant edge of the universe that we completely ignored the structural integrity of the floor right beneath our own feet. Does this change how you view the night sky? It should, because every time you look up and see the comforting, scattered glow of the Milky Way, you are actively participating in a grand, cosmic confirmation bias. You are seeing exactly what your biological brain needs to see to prevent a total psychological breakdown. You see a populated universe, you see neighbors, you see safety. But what if that safety is nothing more than a rounding error? What if the equations of general relativity only seem to work locally, because we deliberately chose to ignore the massive gaping wound in our own sector of space. The models are beautiful, but beauty is not a requirement for survival. Accuracy is. And our accuracy has been completely compromised by our own desperation to feel normal. There is no normal. There is only the specific, terrifying reality of the coordinates we are trapped in. The reassuring glow of the cosmic background radiation is just the wallpaper covering a structural collapse. The foundation is rotting from the inside out, and the math is finally beginning to crack under the strain. You are not standing on a stable foundation, you are resting on a statistical error. But what happens when the ice beneath us begins to tilt, pulled by something completely invisible? Then, we develop the ability to measure the shadows of ancient light. Between 2008 and 2010, Alexander Kashlinsky and a team of researchers at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center utilized data from the WMAP satellite. They were looking for an extremely subtle footprint known as the kinematic Sunyaev-Zeldovich effect. This is a masterpiece of modern physics. As massive galaxy clusters move through the residual heat of the Big Bang, the hot gas within them collides with microwave photons, shifting their energy ever so slightly. By measuring these minute temperature shifts, researchers can calculate exactly how fast these immense structures are moving relative to the expansion of the universe itself. It is a tool of absolute precision. It was designed to confirm what we already knew, that the local movement of galaxies was random, chaotic, and perfectly balanced by the distribution of mass. Kashlinsky analyzed a massive catalog of 1,400 galaxy clusters spanning billions of light years across the sky. The data was processed. The movement was not random. The expansion was not uniform. The architecture of the cosmos is being actively violated. All 1,400 galaxy clusters, containing trillions of individual stars and an incomprehensible amount of dark matter, are moving together like a unified river. They are hurtling at speeds between 600 and 1,000 kilometers per second, completely ignoring the uniform expansion of the universe. They are all streaming towards a single, highly specific coordinate located somewhere between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela. The astrophysical community named this terrifying phenomenon the dark flow. When you discover a localized anomaly of this magnitude, the immediate psychological response is to search for a mundane culprit. The scientific consensus desperately tried to build a barricade of rationalization. The initial reaction was to blame a local concentration of mass. Astronomers argued that there must be an undiscovered supercluster hiding behind the dense dust of our own Milky Way, acting as a gravitational anchor. It is the ultimate failed comfort. If there is a massive object nearby, then the laws of physics remain unbroken. We simply need a bigger telescope to find it. We desperately wanted to believe that the monster pulling us was sitting right there in the room with us. The telescopes looked. The mass is not there. The math is completely incompatible with reality. There is absolutely nothing within the boundary of the observable universe massive enough to generate a gravitational pull capable of dragging 1,400 galaxy clusters at 1,000 kilometers per second. The physical force required to execute this movement exceeds the total available mass of our visible horizon. The clusters are not falling toward a local object. They are being forcefully dragged by a structure that exists entirely outside the boundary of our universe. Something beyond the wall of light, beyond the limits of relativity, is reaching in and pulling our sector of space toward the dark. You must translate this cosmological failure into a physical environment to truly understand the claustrophobia of this discovery. You are a detective walking into a pristine, undisturbed crime scene. A passenger seated alone inside a heavily armored, windowless luxury train car believes they are in a closed system. The doors are sealed shut with heavy hydraulic locks. You are that passenger. The doors are sealed shut with heavy hydraulic locks. The lighting is steady. The air conditioning hums quietly. You are completely isolated from the outside world, but you feel safe because you understand the physics of your enclosure. You know the train is resting on solid steel tracks. You know the weight of the car keeps it grounded. You pour yourself a cup of black coffee and set it on the perfectly level mahogany table. You are secure in your local environment. Suddenly, the surface of the coffee begins to tremble. It does not ripple from a gentle vibration. The entire angle of the liquid shifts diagonally. The heavy ceramic mug slowly begins to slide across the polished wood, scraping toward the far left corner of the table. Your immediate instinct is to look at the floor. You assume one of the steel wheels has slipped, or the track beneath the train has slightly subsided. You look for a local mechanical failure to explain why gravity inside the room is suddenly pulling sideways. But the floor is perfectly intact. The walls are not buckling. The train car itself has not failed. The horror does not come from the sliding coffee cup. The true, paralyzing dread washes over you when the realization finally clicks. The cup is sliding because the massive 50-ton steel train car you are sitting inside is being physically hoisted into the air by an industrial crane you cannot see. But gravity is not constrained by our inability to see. Gravity does not care about the speed of light, and it does not respect the optical illusions of our telescopes. The dark flow is the undeniable proof that our closed system has been breached. Think about the 1,400 galaxy clusters, not as majestic astronomical bodies, but as a forensic footprint. In criminology, when investigators arrive at a scene, they look for drag marks. If a heavy body is moved across a floor, it leaves a distinct directional smear. The dark flow is a smear of matter stretching across 1 billion light-years of space. It is a physical streak of evidence proving that a massive portion of our reality is being violently relocated. We are not observing a cosmic phenomenon. We are tracking a body being dragged into the dark, and you are part of the evidence. Every single atom in your body, the chair you are sitting on, the bedrock of the Earth, the entire swirling mass of the Milky Way, you are the sliding coffee cup on the mahogany table. You are being pulled toward a set of coordinates that you will never be able to see by a mass that your physics cannot quantify. What does that mean for your perception of reality? It means the foundational narrative of your existence is entirely backwards. You have been taught that the universe is expanding outward, thinning out, drifting peacefully toward a quiet thermal death. That is the story of a calm, isolated system. But a calm system does not bleed. A calm system does not get pulled off its axis by an outside force. If something outside our universe is heavy enough to drag billions of galaxies toward it, then our universe is not the entirety of existence. It is merely a fragment. It is a piece of cosmic debris caught in the gravitational rip current of a much larger, infinitely more violent landscape. This is not a metaphor. Your physical coordinates are actively changing, and you have absolutely no control over the destination. Imagine the psychological state of a hostage locked in the trunk of a moving car. The hostage cannot see the driver, they cannot see the road. All they have is the sensation of momentum. They can feel the car accelerating. They can feel it banking hard to the left. In a desperate attempt to maintain their sanity, the hostage might try to calculate the speed of the vehicle based on the hum of the tires. They might try to map the turns in their head to create an illusion of control. That is what our astrophysics is doing right now. Our beautiful equations of general relativity are just the terrified scribblings of a hostage sitting in the dark, trying to measure the speed of the getaway car. We write papers about the dark flow to avoid facing the reality of the abduction. We measure the velocity of the clusters because measuring the numbers makes us feel like scientists rather than victims. But the numbers do not offer an escape. They only confirm the severity of the breach. You look up at the night sky, specifically toward the constellations of Centaurus and Vela, and you think you are looking at a serene tapestry of stars. You are not. You are looking down the barrel of a gravitational vacuum tube. You are staring directly at the exact point in the sky where the structural integrity of our universe has failed, and where our local reality is leaking out into something else. Why should the cosmos care if we understand it? It shouldn't. And it doesn't. The mechanism pulling us is completely blind. It is a thermodynamic leviathan, executing a mathematical necessity, completely indifferent to the biological anxiety of the creatures living on the dust motes it is dragging. The terror lies in the utter lack of agency. You can build quantum computers. You can split the atom. You can map the cosmic microwave background. But you cannot stop the slide. Every breath you take, every thought you have, occurs while you are hurtling at hundreds of kilometers per second toward a gravitational anomaly that defies the laws of physics. The floor is permanently tilted. The universe is not expanding. It is being dragged. If our sector of the universe is damaged enough to be pulled, what exactly is missing from our surroundings? Cartography is the ultimate expression of human dominance. When we map a territory, we feel an inherent sense of control over it. For decades, astrophysicists have acted as the cosmic surveyors of our local neighborhood, cataloging galaxies and plotting coordinates with relentless precision. We built three-dimensional models of the space immediately surrounding the Milky Way, expecting to find a bustling, densely packed architecture of matter. We assumed our local environment was a representative sample of the greater cosmos, teeming with resources and gravitational anchors. We relied on the fundamental belief that we were placed in a thriving, chaotic, and heavily populated district of reality. In 2013, a team of astronomers named Keenan, Barger, and Cowie from the University of Wisconsin-Madison finalized a massive observational survey. They measured the density of matter radiating outward from our galaxy across billions of light years. The data they returned completely dismantled our geographical security. They confirmed the existence of the KBC Void. Our galaxy is sitting inside a spherical vacuum of space, measuring roughly 2 billion light-years in diameter. Within this colossal boundary, the density of galaxies, stars, and dark matter is sharply depleted, sitting 20% lower than the established cosmic average. This is not a subtle dip in the numbers. This is a massive, gaping hole in the fabric of the local universe. The immediate scientific reflex is to minimize the anomaly. When faced with a terrifying geographical deficit, astronomers point to the history of cosmic voids to calm our nerves. They remind us of the Botas Void, a well-documented region of empty space discovered in 1981. They argue that voids are a completely normal feature of the cosmic web, acting like air bubbles in a sponge. This is a desperate attempt to normalize a terminal diagnosis. The Botas Void is 330 million light-years wide. The KBC Void is over 6 times larger. This difference in scale is not just a geographical curiosity, it is a fatal blow to the laws of physics. According to the Lambda CDM model, the gold standard of cosmic evolution, the universe has a strict speed limit on how fast large-scale structures can form. Gravity is a weak force. It takes immense amounts of time to clear out vast regions of space and pull matter into dense filaments. Given the absolute age of the universe at 13.8 billion years, the mathematics dictate that a void measuring 2 billion light-years across simply did not have enough time to naturally form. It is a thermodynamic impossibility. You cannot sweep a room of that magnitude completely clean in the time allotted since the Big Bang. To protect the models, scientists tried to adjust the parameters. They hoped the missing matter was just dark matter hiding in the shadows. But the missing mass has a physical symptom. The lack of gravitational resistance inside this void is causing our local sector of space to expand faster than the rest of the universe. This phenomenon, known as the Hubble tension, is the direct physical consequence of our starvation. We are expanding too fast because there is absolutely nothing around us heavy enough to hold us back. The parameters do not fit. The time limit is violated. The geometry is artificial. You must step away from the abstract numbers to understand the horror of this environment. We treat the universe like an infinite landscape, but the physics dictate that it behaves much more like a fragile, failing hard drive. In computer engineering, when a physical sector of a magnetic disk becomes corrupted, the system isolates it. It quarantines the damaged area, stripping it of data to prevent the rot from spreading to the healthy partitions. The KBC Void is a bad sector, and you are living inside the quarantined partition. You wake up in your apartment on a Tuesday morning. The air feels normal. The coffee machine hums quietly, but when you step out onto your balcony, you are met with absolute, deafening silence. The air feels normal. The coffee machine hums quietly. You step out onto your balcony, expecting to hear the distant noise of traffic and the chaotic energy of the city. Instead, you are met with absolute, deafening silence. You look down over the railing. The streets are gone. You look toward the horizon. Every single building, park, and highway within a 500-block radius has been completely eradicated. There is no rubble. There are no scorch marks. The earth has just been scraped perfectly flat, leaving a featureless expanse of grey dust stretching as far as the eye can see. Your apartment building is the only structure left standing. You survived. But survival in this scenario is not a blessing. It is a deeply sinister puzzle. A natural disaster like a hurricane or an earthquake leaves chaotic damage. It destroys indiscriminately and leaves debris. But this level of perfect, spherical emptiness requires intent. It requires a mechanism of removal that is horrifyingly precise. You are standing on your balcony, looking at the grey dust, and realizing that your building was not spared by a stroke of luck. Your building was deliberately left in the center of the demolition zone. In software engineering, when a system administrator detects a highly adaptive, potentially destructive piece of malware, they do not immediately delete it. Deletion is messy. It can trigger failsafes or alert the malware to the defense mechanism. Instead, the administrator utilizes a sandbox environment. They isolate the malicious code within a virtual machine, a perfectly simulated partition that mimics a healthy operating system. The malware is allowed to execute its routines. It consumes the fake, localized memory. It believes it is infecting a vast, endless network. It feels successful, but the sandbox has absolutely no connection to the mainframe. The administrator simply stands back and watches the virus run until it exhausts its allocated resources, traps itself in an endless logic loop, and starves to death in the dark. You are the executing code. The Milky Way is your allocated memory. This is the true, paralyzing horror of our geographical coordinates. The universe did not attempt to crush us with a supermassive black hole. It did not sterilize our solar system with a gamma ray burst. Those are chaotic, natural events. Natural events lack precision. What is happening to us is entirely surgical. We have been quarantined. The parameters of our local space have been artificially lowered just enough to sustain our immediate existence, but strictly enough to ensure we can never leave. We are allowed to build our civilizations. We are allowed to split the atom. We are permitted to believe we are the masters of our domain. But the moment we attempt to cross the boundary, the illusion terminates. The moment our theoretical generation ships try to traverse the space beyond our local group, they will hit the vacuum. They will encounter a desert of thermodynamic nothingness, so absolute that even light takes 2 billion years to reach the other side. There are no gas clouds to harvest for fuel. There are no gravitational slingshots to accelerate our vessels. The environment has been purposefully sterilized. The mechanics of interstellar travel have been physically disabled by the lack of mass. Consider the physical space of the room you are sitting in right now. You look at the walls, the furniture, the screen illuminating your face. You feel the warmth of the heater. You hear the frantic digital noise of a connected world. You feel like an active participant in a vast, sprawling reality. But every single joule of energy you consume, every breath of oxygen you take, is drawn from a finite, strictly rationed battery. You are siphoning from a reservoir that was intentionally placed in the exact center of a 2 billion light-year dead zone. You are not part of a larger ecosystem. You are a biological anomaly locked inside a perfectly spherical vault. The Hubble tension is the physical sensation of that vault pulling away from us. Because our sector is starved of mass, there is not enough gravity to hold our local universe together. The void is expanding faster than the space outside it. The sandbox is diluting. The remaining resources are actively being spread thinner and thinner with every passing second. We are not just isolated, we are being actively dissolved by the geometry of our own prison. Why should a supposedly random universe create a perfect sphere of emptiness and then place our specific galaxy directly in the center of it? It shouldn't. We look out at the darkness and wonder why it is so quiet. We wonder why no other civilization has come to visit us, why our radio telescopes pick up nothing but static. We project our own desperate sociability onto the cosmos, assuming that a thriving galactic community is just waiting for us to join them. But a healthy organism does not visit the quarantine ward. The healthy partitions of the universe, the regions where matter is dense and reality functions correctly, are completely inaccessible to us. They are ignoring us by design. The void is not an empty space. It is a biological containment perimeter. We rely on the Copernican principle because it grants us anonymity. Anonymity is the ultimate defense mechanism for a vulnerable species. When you walk through a highly dangerous neighborhood at night, you do not stand under the brightest streetlight. You stay in the shadows. You blend in with the background. The doctrine of cosmic mediocrity allowed us to believe we were standing in the darkest, most unremarkable corner of the universe. It convinced us that the grand, terrifying forces of the cosmos would simply overlook us because we were statistically irrelevant. We mapped the cosmic microwave background, we tracked the redshift of distant quasars, and we constantly reassured ourselves that our vantage point was completely arbitrary. In 2013, the exact same researchers who confirmed the existence of the massive void finalized the internal mapping of its structure. They measured the distance from the Milky Way to the inner boundaries of the emptiness. They checked the geometry. Out of the incomprehensibly vast volume of space, an area so large it takes light 2 billion years to simply cross it, the Milky Way did not form near the edge. It did not form in a random, off-center cluster. We are situated just a few hundred megaparsecs from the exact geometric core of the void. We are resting practically dead center on the absolute bullseye of the largest dead zone ever recorded in human history. The scientific establishment immediately panicked. A central position in a perfectly spherical anomaly is a direct, violent violation of the Copernican principle. To prevent a philosophical collapse, cosmologists quickly deployed their ultimate defensive argument, the observer effect. They insisted that this was merely an optical illusion born from our limited perspective. They argued that a man standing in a thick fog bank always feels like he is in the exact center of the fog, simply because his vision drops off evenly in all directions. It was a beautiful, highly rational excuse. It allowed the textbooks to remain unchanged. The academic world collectively agreed that our central position was just a quirk of the light, a meaningless coincidence generated by the fact that our telescopes are anchored to Earth. It is the equivalent of a man finding a sniper's laser dot resting perfectly between his eyes and desperately convincing himself it is just a random reflection of sunlight. The mathematics do not support the fog. The probability approaches absolute zero. The coordinate is artificial. You cannot explain away a 2 billion light-year perimeter as a trick of the light when the gravitational deficit is physically tearing at our expansion rate. The void is a physical reality, and our placement within it is a statistical impossibility under the laws of random distribution. A life-bearing galaxy randomly assembling itself at the precise geometric heart of the largest structural anomaly in the observable universe is not an accident of nature. Nature produces chaos, asymmetry, and rough edges. Nature does not produce perfect spheres and then carefully deposit a conscious observer exactly in the middle. The Copernican principle has been permanently shattered. We are not an ordinary byproduct of cosmic evolution, safely hiding in the dark. We have been deliberately centered. Translate this mathematical precision into a physical environment to understand what this means for your biology. A traveler desperately lost in a dense, hostile, disease-ridden jungle is entirely at the mercy of a random ecosystem. But breaking through the tree line into a perfectly circular, sterile clearing is not a rescue. The canopy blocks out the sky. The air is thick with rot and predatory noise. For days, you wander blindly through the chaotic, unpredictable overgrowth, entirely at the mercy of a random and violent ecosystem. Then, you break through the tree line. You step out of the chaotic jungle and find yourself standing in a perfectly circular, sterile clearing. The ground has been scorched completely flat. There is no vegetation. There are no insects. The perimeter of the jungle forms a flawless, calculated ring around you. You feel a brief moment of immense relief, thinking you have found a sanctuary from the chaos. But then you look down at the dirt. You realize your heavy boots are firmly bolted to a solid steel plate, driven into the exact geometric center of the clearing. You cannot walk toward the tree line. You cannot hide in the brush. In evolutionary biology, isolation is the primary mechanism used to manipulate a species. When a researcher wants to study a highly volatile, unpredictable pathogen, they do not let it grow organically in the wild, where it might interact with a chaotic environment. They extract it. They place it in a sterile, strictly regulated laboratory. They take a tiny, circular glass Petri dish, fill it with a measured amount of nutrient gel, and they drop the biological sample precisely into the dead center of the glass. They do this because the center provides an equal buffer of safety in all directions. It ensures the pathogen cannot accidentally spill over the edge and infect the outside world. The KBC Void is the glass dish. The Milky Way is the volatile pathogen. We look at our evolutionary history and we feel immense pride. We believe that human consciousness is a triumphant anomaly. We climbed out of the primordial soup, we survived the ice ages, we split the atom, and we built machines that can read the residual heat of creation. We view these milestones as the ultimate victories of a free-thinking, independent species, conquering an untamed cosmos. But a colony of bacteria multiplying rapidly in a petri dish also believes it is conquering its universe. It consumes the agar, it builds intricate microscopic structures, and it assumes the flat expanse of the gel is an infinite frontier. It has absolutely no concept of the researcher standing over the table, quietly recording its behavior under a bright fluorescent light. A rat running through a complex labyrinth feels a rush of intelligence when it memorizes the correct sequence of left and right turns to reach the food. The rat believes it has mastered its environment. It never looks up to see the man in the white coat holding a stopwatch. You are the rat. You are the pathogen. The Copernican principle was our desperate, collective attempt to convince ourselves that there was no man in the white coat. We chanted, "We are nowhere special," like a psychological mantra, because the alternative destroys the concept of free will. If we are deliberately centered inside a 2 billion light-year wide sphere of artificial emptiness, then we are not a natural occurrence. We are an experiment. And experiments are strictly controlled. Do you feel the weight of that clinical observation? The sheer thermodynamic engineering required to construct this enclosure is physically paralyzing. To clear out a spherical region of space that large, to strip away tens of thousands of galaxies just to create a silent buffer zone requires a mechanism of force that human physics cannot even begin to calculate. The cosmos did not just randomly forget to place matter around us, it actively excavated our neighborhood. It built a quarantine wall of nothingness, so vast that even light, the absolute speed limit of reality, takes 2 billion years just to cross the gap. This was done to ensure we never leave. We are allowed to evolve, we are allowed to build our quantum computers and write our poetry, but we are strictly forbidden from participating in the larger architecture of the universe. The silence of the night sky is not the quiet of a vast, empty wilderness. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of an audience. It is the hushed anticipation of a clinical mechanism watching a chemical reaction unfold behind a sheet of bulletproof glass. When you walk outside tonight and look up at the stars, you are not looking at a sprawling, infinite frontier waiting to be explored. You are looking at the curved, impenetrable ceiling of a laboratory incubator. The darkness between the stars is the sterile boundary. It is a physical moat designed to keep the infection contained. What happens to a biological sample when the researcher has gathered enough data? The false comfort of the center point is that it provides a temporary illusion of stability. We are currently thriving inside the void because our local solar system still has a tiny reserve of resources, but the Hubble tension is physically tearing the edges of our sandbox further and further away. The void is expanding. The nutrient gel is running out. Eventually, the stars in our local group will burn through their nuclear fuel. And because we are trapped in the dead center of a sterilized quarantine zone, no new matter, no fresh gas clouds will ever fall in to replace them. The experiment will conclude. We will simply freeze in the dark, exactly where we were placed, completely unable to touch the thriving, densely packed regions of the universe outside our cell. That is the terrifying efficiency of this cosmic architecture. It does not need to deploy weapons to destroy us. It only needs to wait for us to consume ourselves. You are not a traveler in this cosmos. You are the specimen in the middle of the slide. If we were intentionally placed in the center of an empty sphere, what exactly is this void designed to keep out? For the last century, humanity has suffered from a profound acoustic arrogance. We discovered electromagnetic waves, and we immediately assumed the universe was a passive, infinite concert hall waiting to receive our voice. We constructed massive parabolic dishes, pointed them at the dark, and began broadcasting the proof of our existence. The crowning achievement of this technological pride occurred in 1974 with the Arecibo message. We utilized the largest radio telescope on the planet to fire a 1 million watt transmission directly toward the globular star cluster M13. We meticulously encoded the chemical formulas of our DNA, the dimensions of the human body, and the exact coordinates of our solar system into a binary sequence. We transmitted this data with the absolute conviction that we were galactic citizens. We believed that by simply pushing enough energy into the vacuum, we could permanently etch our signature into the fabric of the cosmos. We trust the physics of transmission because, on Earth, a loud enough voice will always reach someone. We find comfort in the idea that someone is listening. The transmission is already dead. The physics do not scale. The universe is actively erasing our voice. Space does not operate like the atmosphere of our planet. It is strictly governed by the inverse square law of electromagnetic radiation. As a radio signal travels outward, its wavefront expands geometrically, and the energy it carries is violently diluted over the increasing surface area. This is not a slow fade. It is an exponential collapse. Within a radius of barely 100 light years, that 1 million watt scream of human triumph degrades completely. The carefully encoded data points representing our biology and our achievements are ripped apart, dissolving into meaningless thermodynamic noise. They become permanently indistinguishable from the residual microwave static of the Big Bang. The astronomical community is terrified by this physical limitation, so they immediately attempt to engineer a loophole. They pivot their funding to optical SETI programs, arguing that tightly focused, high-energy lasers could act as an interstellar fiber optic cable piercing through the darkness without losing their structural integrity. It is a desperate mathematical illusion of a lifeline. A laser is still entirely bound by the physical medium it is forced to travel through. Over vast distances, the relentless expansion of the universe stretches the wavelength of the light, draining its energy. Clouds of interstellar dust and quantum scattering act as microscopic abrasives, constantly grinding down the photons. Now, apply these absolute limits of communication to the geometry of the KBC Void. We are sitting near the exact geometric center. The perimeter of this emptiness, the closest region of space where normal matter and dense galaxy clusters actually exist, is roughly 1 billion light-years away in any direction. That radius is not just a measurement of empty distance. It is an absolute thermodynamic firewall. It is a mathematical barrier engineered with such scale that it is physically guaranteed to strip the kinetic energy from any transmission attempting to cross it. The void does not need to actively jam our signals. It simply forces us to exhaust our energy trying to cross an unbridgeable gap. You must translate this concept of signal degradation into a physical, architectural environment to truly understand the claustrophobia of our predicament. A human being locked inside a subterranean, military-grade anechoic chamber is perfectly healthy. Your lungs are full of oxygen, your vocal cords are undamaged. But the room is a perfect cube, lined with dense, acoustic foam. The room is a perfect cube. The walls, the floor, and the ceiling are lined with dense, wedge-shaped acoustic foam, explicitly designed to absorb 99.99% of all acoustic reflections. The heavy steel vault door is sealed shut from the outside. You are perfectly healthy. Your lungs are full of oxygen. Your vocal cords are undamaged. You have the complete biological capacity to communicate. You walk over to the heavy door and look through the small, reinforced glass observation window. Standing in the brightly lit concrete hallway outside is a technician. He is holding a clipboard. He is the one who locked you in. You press your face against the cold glass. You open your mouth and you scream. You put every ounce of your physical strength, every joule of biological energy your body can produce, into generating a sound loud enough to penetrate the steel. You scream until the blood vessels in your eyes burst and your throat tears. But the architecture of the room does not allow the sound to propagate. The acoustic wedges instantly swallow the kinetic energy of your voice, turning your desperate plea for help into a microscopic amount of heat dissipated in the foam. The technician in the hallway continues taking notes. He does not even look up. The horror of the situation does not come from your inability to make a sound. The true, suffocating terror comes from the realization that the room was specifically designed to let you scream, while completely guaranteeing that the sound will never leave the boundaries of the walls. We launch probes like Voyager and Pioneer, bolting gold-plated records and aluminum plaques to their hulls. We etch drawings of humans and maps of our pulsars onto them, treating them like messages in a bottle cast into a cosmic ocean. We celebrate these launches as profound acts of interstellar diplomacy. But when you factor in the scale of the void, these probes are not majestic ambassadors. They are the tragic, pathetic gestures of a prisoner sliding a note under a door that leads absolutely nowhere. By the time Voyager reaches the inner edge of the Oort cloud, its power source will be dead. It will drift through the absolute zero of the quarantine zone as an inert piece of metal, completely blind and completely silent, for hundreds of millions of years. It will never reach the edge of the void. It will never cross the perimeter. Our isolation is mathematically absolute. But the firewall of this containment zone has a secondary, far more disturbing function. A wall that prevents a signal from escaping is equally effective at preventing a signal from entering. We have spent decades pointing our receiver arrays at the sky, listening desperately for the faint radio chatter of another civilization. We sweep through billions of frequencies, analyzing the static, praying to find a structured, artificial pattern. We assume that if an advanced alien empire exists, they would be broadcasting a beacon, a lighthouse in the dark. And when we hear nothing, we suffer from an intense, existential loneliness. We assume we are the only intelligent species in the universe. But you cannot measure the population of a city by listening for traffic noise while locked inside a soundproof bunker. The thriving, densely populated galaxy clusters outside our 2 billion light-year perimeter could be radiating with the energy of 1 trillion Type 3 civilizations. They could be building megastructures, manipulating stars, and flooding the cosmos with immense navigational beacons. The universe outside our cage could be deafeningly loud, but we will never know. The thermodynamic distance of the void acts as an impenetrable filter. Any signal originating from outside the boundary will be stretched, scattered, and degraded into invisible cosmic dust long before it ever brushes against the outermost sensors of our solar system. We are not just trapped, we have been rendered completely deaf to the reality of the larger universe. Forced sensory deprivation destroys the human mind within hours. When placed in total darkness and total silence, the brain begins to malfunction, manufacturing artificial sounds just to feed itself. When a human being is placed in total darkness and total silence, the brain begins to malfunction within hours. It starts hallucinating. It manufactures artificial sounds and phantom lights just to give itself something to process. It cannot handle the lack of input. Our civilization is experiencing this exact same neurological breakdown on a planetary scale. We are so desperate for contact that we analyze the flickering of distant stars and immediately theorize alien megastructures. We detect a fast radio burst and instantly assume it is a propulsion system. We are a sensory-deprived organism trapped in a dark cell, desperately trying to construct a populated reality out of the meaningless static of our confinement. We are allowed to look at the faint, 13-billion-year-old ghosts of distant galaxies, but we are strictly prohibited from interacting with the present. The present tense of the universe has been locked away from us. This is the true function of the KBC quarantine zone. It is not just a physical barrier designed to hold our bodies in place. It is an information firewall designed to isolate our minds. It ensures that humanity remains completely ignorant of the true nature of the cosmic hierarchy. If you are running a dangerous biological experiment, the most critical rule of containment is that the specimen must never realize the full scope of the laboratory. The specimen must believe that its immediate surroundings are the entirety of existence. By surrounding us with 1 billion light-years of dead space, the architecture of the void successfully cuts us off from the collective data stream of the cosmos. We are trying to join a conversation that we have been mathematically barred from hearing. Every radio dish we build is a monument to our own delusion. We are shouting into a pillow the size of a galaxy. But if our signals cannot penetrate the edge of this void, what about the signals of those who share this dead zone with us? For a long time, we used the sheer number of stars to anesthetize our fear of the dark. The mathematics of probability offered a profound biological comfort. In 2018, NASA concluded the primary mission of the Kepler Space Telescope. For nearly a decade, This highly sensitive piece of orbital machinery stared unblinking at a single, crowded patch of the Milky Way in the constellation of Cygnus. It measured the microscopic dimming of starlight caused by planets passing in front of their host sun. The data it returned fundamentally altered our perception of cosmic real estate. Kepler allowed astrophysicists to confidently calculate that there are roughly 300 million exoplanets orbiting within the habitable zones of their local stars, just within our own galaxy. 300 million worlds resting at the exact thermal distance required to sustain liquid water on their surfaces. We looked at this number and felt an immense collective relief. It was a statistical guarantee of company. We convinced ourselves that the chemical ignition of life was a mundane, inevitable function of the universe, and that the Milky Way must be a thriving, densely populated ecosystem. If life is a statistical certainty, then noise must be an absolute physical requirement. A biological species cannot achieve technological dominance without generating immense amounts of electromagnetic interference. Driven by this assumption, the astronomical community launched the Breakthrough Listen project in 2020. It was the most rigorous, heavily funded search for extraterrestrial intelligence ever conducted. They aimed our most powerful radio telescopes at the closest planetary systems and scanned billions of radio frequencies across the quietest bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. They deployed complex algorithms designed to filter out the natural static of pulsars and quasars, looking for a single, mathematically structured spike. They were looking for the undeniable techno-signature of a peer civilization. They found absolutely nothing. Every single frequency was dead. When faced with this terrifying silence, the scientific community immediately deployed a theoretical safety net. Astrobiologists argued that perhaps advanced civilizations simply outgrow radio technology. They suggested that listening for radio waves in a billion-year-old galaxy is like listening for smoke signals in a modern city. They hypothesized that older, superior species communicate via tightly focused lasers or methods we cannot yet comprehend. This is the ultimate intellectual excuse. It allows us to believe that the room is full of people, and we are just too deaf to hear the conversation. To test this comforting hypothesis, cosmologists abandoned radio waves and turned to the inescapable laws of thermodynamics. In 2015, researchers analyzed data from the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, or the WISE satellite. They were no longer looking for communication. They were looking for heavy industry. According to the Kardashev scale, a highly advanced civilization will inevitably require the total energy output of its host star, forcing them to construct a megastructure, a Dyson sphere, to encapsulate it. You can hide a radio transmission, but you cannot cheat the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy is an absolute, unyielding physical dictator. Any machine performing work, from a combustion engine to a theoretical stellar harvester, must generate waste heat. A Dyson sphere, absorbing the energy of a star, would inevitably glow violently in the mid-infrared spectrum. It is a thermodynamic mandate. The WISE satellite meticulously scanned 100,000 neighboring galaxies, looking for the specific thermal exhaust of these advanced empires. Out of 100,000 galaxies containing trillions of individual stars, they found zero evidence of artificial thermal radiation. The optimists immediately counter this by claiming that a sufficiently advanced species might use exotic physics, like dark matter engineering, to operate at 100% efficiency and mask their heat signature entirely. This is an act of scientific denial. To claim a civilization produces no waste heat is to claim they exist completely outside the fundamental laws of physics. The lack of infrared glow is not a sign of advanced stealth technology. It is the absolute mathematical proof of an empty room. The waste heat is missing, the radio spectrum is empty, the local structure is functionally dead. You must stop looking at the Fermi paradox as a philosophical question about the entire universe. You must place it within the physical, geographical reality of the KBC Void. We have spent decades terrified by the silence of the cosmos, completely failing to realize that we are not listening to the cosmos. We are exclusively listening to the interior of a quarantine zone. Out of the 300 million theoretically habitable worlds trapped inside this 2 billion light-year boundary, not a single one is broadcasting. Not a single one is building infrastructure large enough to register a thermal footprint. You have to analyze this absence of data not as a cosmological mystery, but as a forensic behavioral pattern. Imagine stumbling upon a massive, subterranean, military bunker designed to house 10,000 people during a nuclear winter. The heavy steel doors are sealed shut from the inside. The ventilation fans are humming perfectly. The generators are active. You force the vault open and walk down into the brightly lit concrete corridors. The air is warm. There are trays of fresh food sitting untouched on the cafeteria tables. The beds are perfectly made. But there is absolutely no one walking the halls. You stand in the center of an environment meticulously engineered to support life, and you hear nothing but the mechanical drone of the air filters. The initial feeling is confusion, but it rapidly curdles into a very specific, primal dread. You walk past the cafeteria tables. You notice a chair pushed back in a hurry. You see a jacket dropped carelessly on the floor. The environment has not been abandoned. It has been yielded. You realize that the absolute silence in the bunker is not the natural quiet of an empty room. It is a manufactured, strictly enforced silence. It is the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of 10,000 people curled up beneath the floorboards, holding their breath, waiting for something terrifying to pass by the heavy steel door. This is the exact acoustic environment of the Milky Way. When the WISE satellite scanned our cosmic neighborhood and found zero evidence of artificial heat, it did not prove that we are alone. It proved that the other occupants of this quarantine zone have successfully achieved complete thermodynamic suppression. To understand how horrifying that is, you must understand what it actually takes for an advanced civilization to hide its heat signature from the universe. You cannot simply turn off a radio transmitter. Thermodynamics demands that every action produces heat. If a peer civilization exists within our galaxy, they have realized that emitting infrared radiation is a death sentence. To achieve the absolute zero profile that our telescopes are seeing, they had to make a conscious, species-wide decision to halt their technological expansion. They had to dismantle their fusion reactors. They had to stop harvesting the energy of their stars. They had to purposefully regress their energy consumption to pre-industrial levels, or bury themselves deep beneath the icy crusts of rogue planets, entering a state of permanent, freezing aestivation. They have locked themselves in the dark, slowing their biological and mechanical heartbeats to match the frozen static of the cosmic background radiation. They gave up the stars just to remain invisible. And they did this because they understand the true nature of the KBC Void. We look at the missing 20% of matter in our local universe, and we see an astrophysical curiosity. They look at the missing mass, and they see a cleared line of sight. In a densely packed galaxy cluster, a civilization can hide. The immense clouds of interstellar dust, the blinding radiation of supernovas, and the chaotic gravitational crossfire of thousands of galaxies provide a natural camouflage. It is a thick jungle where a heat signature can be easily lost in the background noise. But inside the 2 billion light-year diameter of the KBC Void, the jungle has been clear-cut. The dust is gone. The background noise has been dramatically lowered. The void is a sniper's killing field. If you light a match in the middle of a dense forest, you might go unnoticed. If you light a match in the center of an endless, flat, pitch-black desert, you can be seen from the horizon. The void was not just designed to keep us isolated from the rest of the universe. It was designed to make us perfectly visible to whatever is monitoring the containment zone. Now, consider our behavior within this environment. We have spent the last 100 years doing the exact opposite of aestivation. We are actively detonating nuclear weapons in our atmosphere. We are flooding the electromagnetic spectrum with television broadcasts, military radar, and high-frequency trading signals. We are building massive optical lasers to punch through the dark. We are the oblivious fool, walking into the center of the silent bunker, turning on a blinding flashlight, and screaming at the top of our lungs to ask if anyone wants to be friends. The hundreds of millions of habitable worlds in our galaxy are not empty. They are watching us. They are watching us broadcast our coordinates, our biological makeup, and our technological capabilities into the void. They are watching us light the match in the dark room, and they are absolutely terrified of us, not because we are a threat, but because we are loud. In a predator-prey dynamic, the prey does not interact with the member of the herd that is actively bleeding and making noise. The herd steps back. They distance themselves from the anomaly, knowing that the noise will inevitably attract the mechanism of correction. We look at the Fermi paradox and we ask, where is everybody? As if their absence is a tragedy. We mourn our cosmic loneliness, but we are mourning an illusion. The absolute lack of techno-signatures is the most profound warning label ever written by the laws of physics. It is a universal consensus reached by millions of independent biological entities. The math is simple. The universe is incredibly old, life is statistically common, and the local sector is completely silent. Silence in a crowded room is never an accident. It is a survival strategy. If everything inside the void is hiding, what structural law of the universe forced them to do so? In 2022, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Elaine Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger. They were honored for conducting a series of incredibly precise experiments that tested Bell's theorem. Their data proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the universe is not locally real. They demonstrated that entangled quantum particles can synchronize their states over vast distances instantaneously, blatantly ignoring the absolute speed limit of light. This created a catastrophic paradox in the scientific community. If particles can communicate faster than light, then Einstein's theory of relativity, the fundamental architecture of how we understand time, space, and causality, is completely wrong. The mathematical panic was absolute. To save the foundational laws of physics from collapsing, a solution was championed by another Nobel laureate, Gerard Hooft. He proposed a theoretical framework known as superdeterminism. On a strictly mathematical level, superdeterminism perfectly resolves the quantum paradox without breaking the speed of light. It saves the equations. But the cost of this mathematical salvation is the complete and absolute eradication of human agency. The math requires a sacrifice. The randomness is an illusion. Your choices have never belonged to you. Superdeterminism states that the entangled particles are not magically communicating with each other across space. Instead, their states were permanently correlated at the exact moment of the Big Bang. The universe only appears to be making decisions in real time. In reality, the script was finished 13.8 billion years ago. When confronted with this, the standard human defense mechanism is to separate biology from physics. People desperately argue that while quantum particles might follow a rigid script, human consciousness is an independent observer. We believe we are the ones choosing when and how to measure the particles. But physics does not recognize your ego. You are not a spectator standing outside the terrarium. You are made of the exact same protons and electrons as the measuring device. If the state of the microscopic particle was determined at the dawn of time, then the exact chemical reaction in your brain that led you to build the machine, look through the lens, and write down the result was determined right alongside it. There are no independent observers. There is only a single, unbroken chain of dominoes falling exactly as they were arranged. Now, apply this merciless, deterministic law to the geographical nightmare of the KBC Void. The existence of a 2 billion light-year quarantine zone is terrifying, but believing we ended up in the geometric center of it by a random roll of the cosmic dice implies that things could have been different. It implies a sense of chaotic fairness. Superdeterminism aggressively removes that comfort. It dictates that the massive, spherical absence of matter surrounding our galaxy was coded into the initial conditions of the universe. Our placement on the absolute bullseye of the dead zone was not a statistical accident. It was an unavoidable mathematical output. To understand the psychological violence of this theory, you must strip away the abstract astrophysics and look directly at your own perception of time. Imagine you are holding a thick, complex novel. You are reading a tense chapter where the protagonist is trapped in a life or death situation. You feel their anxiety. You read their internal monologue as they weigh their options, agonize over the morality of their choices, and finally make a desperate, sudden move to save themselves. To the character inside the narrative, the moment feels entirely alive. They believe their thoughts are generating the future. But you, the reader holding the physical book, know the horrifying truth of their existence. You know that their agonizing decision is permanently printed in black ink on page 204. You know that they never actually had a choice, because the ending was already written, bound, and published before they even realized they were in danger. The protagonist cannot change the ink. They can only experience the illusion of choosing it. Every agonizing decision you have ever made, every moment of profound grief, every sudden burst of adrenaline, none of it was generated by your conscious mind. It was all hard-coded into the initial distribution of mass and energy. When you chose to stay awake tonight, when you clicked on this audio, when you felt a sudden tension in your shoulders just now, you did not author those actions. The precise arrangement of interacting particles expanding outward from the dawn of creation guaranteed that your specific biological form would sit in that exact chair at this exact coordinate, experiencing this exact chemical reaction of fear. You are a passenger trapped behind the eyes of an automaton. Think about the psychological violence of this realization when applied to our geographical isolation. The 2 billion light-year quarantine zone surrounding our galaxy is not a prison built to contain a volatile, unpredictable species. A prison implies that the captive committed an action to warrant the cage, or at least possesses the chaotic potential to cause harm. Superdeterminism dictates something far more insulting. The void was not built around us. We were generated by the void. In a fully deterministic system, every variable must perfectly balance. If the central regions of a cosmic void are severely starved of mass, if the gravitational forces are mathematically weakened, the equation must compensate by allowing a highly specific, localized anomaly to occur at the geometric center. We are that mathematical anomaly. The Earth, the Milky Way, human consciousness, we are not the grand architects of our own destiny. We are the thermodynamic waste product of a local gravitational deficit. The system did not isolate us because we are special. It spawned us in the dead center of a 2 billion light-year desert because a barren, disconnected coordinate is the only place in the entire equation where our existence wouldn't interfere with the actual, important architecture of the universe. We are the mathematical equivalent of an error message hidden in a dead sector of a hard drive, perfectly quarantined from birth so we do not corrupt the running code. Look around the room you are sitting in right now. The walls, the door, the shadows pooling in the corners. You feel a sense of ownership over this space because you believe you chose to inhabit it. But if the universe is not locally real, If superdeterminism is the absolute law, then your room is not a sanctuary you built. It is a physical manifestation of your total lack of agency. The atoms in the drywall and the molecules of oxygen you are breathing were destined to intersect with the atoms of your lungs at this precise millisecond, calculated billions of years before the first star ignited. The claustrophobia is no longer just about the empty space outside the galaxy. The claustrophobia is realizing that every physical object around you is part of a rigid, immovable script pressing against your skin. You cannot change the position of a single dust mote floating in the air, because doing so would require you to rewrite the entire history of the cosmos. This is the ultimate manipulation of your reality. Your brain is a biological engine explicitly designed to gaslight you into believing you have control. Imagine driving a car down a pitch-black highway at midnight. Your hands are gripping the heavy leather steering wheel. You feel the mechanical resistance as you navigate the sharp curves. You press the brake and feel the kinetic shift of the chassis. You are completely convinced that you are operating the machine. But as the headlights illuminate a long, straight stretch of road, you look down at the floorboards. The steering column is severed. It is not connected to the axle. The pedals are wired to absolutely nothing. The car is permanently locked onto a recessed, heavy steel rail, pulling you forward at a predetermined speed toward a destination you cannot see. The resistance in the wheel, the tension in the brakes, it is all artificial feedback. It is a tactile lie, engineered by the manufacturer to keep the occupant calm while they are being transported in the dark. That artificial feedback is what you call free will. You look up at the night sky and you feel a sense of existential dread, wondering what moves in the shadows beyond the KBC Void. You strategize, you hope, but your hope is just another sequence of precompiled data executing exactly on schedule. The isolation is absolute because it is not just geographical, it is chronological. You cannot outsmart a predator that finished hunting you before you were even born. The parameters of our existence are permanently locked. You did not wander into the cage. The cage was written into your DNA before the Earth cooled. The concept of this physical quarantine is heavy, but it is not just suspended in deep space. The void is collapsing inward, directly into your room. We rely on the physical boundaries of our immediate environment to ground our sanity. When the scale of the cosmos becomes too vast and terrifying to comprehend, we naturally retreat into the microscopic certainty of our own bodies. We find absolute comfort in the tactile feedback of reality. For over a century, the standard model of particle physics has provided us with what we believe to be the ultimate, secure, architectural blueprint of the material world. We mapped the atom with the same arrogance we use to map the stars. We understand that the nucleus, the dense heart of the atom containing the protons and neutrons, is unimaginably small. It is roughly 100,000 times smaller than the total boundary of the atom itself. To maintain the structure of this atomic model, physicists discovered a mechanism of absolute perfection, known as the Pauli exclusion principle. This is a fundamental law of quantum mechanics that strictly forbids any two electrons from occupying the exact same quantum state at the same time. It acts as an invisible, impenetrable shield of electromagnetic force. When the electron shells of two atoms are pushed together, this principle forces them to repel one another with immense violence. We celebrate this mechanism as a triumph of natural engineering. It is the very reason why matter is stable. It is the reason why objects have volume, why the ground supports our weight, and why the physical universe does not simply collapse into a hyperdense point of nothingness. When presented with the reality of atomic structure, the human mind immediately builds a defensive rationalization. We acknowledge that our bodies are technically composed of 99.9999999% empty space. We accept the math, but we aggressively quarantine that fact to the realm of the microscopic, we tell ourselves that the quantum scale does not invalidate our macroscopic daily experience. You knock your knuckles against a heavy oak desk and hear the sharp, reassuring thud of wood. You wrap your arms around a loved one and feel the undeniable, comforting warmth and pressure of their physical form. You convince yourself that regardless of what the equations say about empty space, your biological connection to the world is absolute, continuous, and intimately tangible. You believe that you are physically touching the universe. The connection is a fabrication. The pressure is a lie. The physical world is actively rejecting you. You must strip away the biological illusion and look exclusively at the electromagnetic mechanics of your own skin. When you reach out and place your hand flat against the surface of a table, you are not making contact. As your flesh approaches the wood, the electron shells of your atoms and the electron shells of the table's atoms begin to interact. The Pauli exclusion principle strictly forbids them from merging. A violent electromagnetic repulsion kicks in. A microscopic, insurmountable gap of completely empty space remains permanently wedged between your skin and the object. You have never actually touched a single object in your entire life. You are currently hovering a microscopic fraction of a millimeter above the fabric of your chair, suspended entirely by a localized force field of electromagnetic repulsion. The sensation you call touch is nothing more than a profound neurological deception. When that invisible, repulsive force presses against the nerve endings in your fingertips, your biological hardware translates that invisible resistance into the tactile sensation of pressure, texture, and heat. Your brain is actively lying to you. It manufactures the vivid hallucination of physical contact to prevent you from realizing that you are completely, irrevocably disconnected from the material world. This is the ultimate transition of scale. The cosmic isolation of the KBC Void is not a distant astronomical phenomenon happening 2 billion light-years away. It is the fundamental blueprint of reality, and it is repeating perfectly inside your own biology. The exact same terrifying principle of physical separation that prevents our galaxy from interacting with the thriving clusters of the universe is actively preventing the atoms of your own body from making contact with the room you are sitting in. The void is not out there in the dark. It is stitched into the very fabric of your anatomy. It is wedged between every single carbon atom in your DNA. You are a walking manifestation of the quarantine zone. You must view this through the lens of pure body horror. You are not a cohesive organism interacting smoothly with your environment. You are a hostage, trapped inside the strict, unyielding geometry of your own atomic boundaries. A deep-sea diver descending to the absolute bottom of the Mariana Trench is sealed inside a massive atmospheric diving suit forged from solid titanium. The suit keeps you breathing, but the price of that survival is absolute sensory isolation. Because the water pressure at that depth would instantly crush a human body, you are sealed inside a massive, heavily armored atmospheric diving suit forged from solid titanium. The suit is a masterpiece of survival engineering. It keeps you breathing. It keeps you alive in a hostile environment. But the price of that survival is absolute sensory isolation. You can look through the thick, reinforced glass of the helmet and see the jagged rocks of the ocean floor. You can reach out with the heavy, mechanical claws of the suit and pick up a stone. You can feel the immense, crushing weight of the ocean pressing against the titanium joints, transferring a dull, mechanical strain into your shoulders. But your actual flesh never touches a single drop of the freezing water. Your skin never grazes the rough surface of the stone. Every interaction you have ever had with the physical world has been mediated through a proxy. Your brain is a completely dark, silent organ locked inside the thick bone of your skull. It has never seen sunlight. It has never felt the wind. It relies entirely on a constant stream of electrical impulses sent by your sensory organs, which are themselves just hovering above the objects they claim to be touching. Your mind is sitting in a sealed control room, watching a delayed, heavily filtered monitor, desperately trying to construct a cohesive reality out of the electromagnetic static of a world that refuses to let you in. This makes the concept of human intimacy profoundly disturbing. Human intimacy is the most vital biological anchor we have. The physical comfort of holding another human being grounds us when the world becomes too overwhelming. But physics strips even that away. That comfort is the most vital biological anchor we have. But physics strips even that away. When you embrace someone, you are not merging with them. You are simply bringing two massive, incredibly complex collections of empty space into close proximity until your respective electromagnetic fields violently clash. The warmth you feel is just the thermodynamic transfer of kinetic energy across a microscopic chasm. The pressure you feel is the physical resistance of two voids refusing to intersect. You have never touched the people you love. You have only ever felt their atomic rejection of you. We are a species desperate for connection, engineered by a universe that explicitly forbids it at the most fundamental level of reality. Why would the architecture of the cosmos be designed this way? Why implant the intense biological desire for tactile connection in an organism only to build the laws of quantum mechanics to ensure that connection is physically impossible? It is the ultimate mechanism of psychological containment. If you realize that your body is a closed system hovering above the floor, completely disconnected from the environment, the illusion of your agency shatters. You realize that you are not an active participant in the universe. You are a discrete package of data, neatly wrapped in a repulsive field, moving through a physical simulation that you are not allowed to actually touch. Your isolation is not a side effect of your geometry. Your isolation is your geometry. The quarantine is a fractal. It repeats flawlessly at every conceivable scale. Astronomers look through their telescopes and see the KBC Void, a terrifying expanse of nothingness separating our galaxy from the dense, populated regions of the cosmic web. Biologists look through their microscopes and see the exact same emptiness separating the nucleus of an atom from its electron cloud. It is a Russian nesting doll of sensory deprivation. You are sitting inside a microscopic void, which is orbiting a star inside a larger void, which is suspended in the exact geometric center of the largest dead zone in the observable universe. As above, so below. The mechanics of the cage do not change. They only scale up. There is no escape from this architecture, because the architecture is what gives you form. If the Pauli exclusion principle were to suddenly fail, if the universe finally allowed you to actually touch the chair beneath you, the electromagnetic boundary would collapse. The atoms in your body would instantly lose their volume. You would immediately phase through the floor, your chemical bonds would dissolve, and your physical form would be obliterated into a microscopic, hyperdense smear of subatomic particles. You only exist because the universe refuses to let you touch it. You are kept alive by the exact same mechanism of repulsion that keeps you permanently alone. The distance between us and the stars is not a tragedy. It is the exact same distance that keeps your heart from collapsing into your ribcage. The emptiness is not a flaw in the system. It is the structural integrity of the cage. You spend your life terrified of the dark space outside the Milky Way, completely failing to realize that the dark space is the only thing keeping you intact. The void is not out there. It is the only thing holding you together. You are not meant to touch the universe. You are meant to be contained within it. The entire structure of reality, from the macro voids pulling at our galaxy to the microscopic empty space inside your atoms, is a synchronized system of quarantine. We spend our lives looking up at the sky, wondering when we will finally be invited to join the galactic community. We build larger telescopes, we fire stronger radio signals, and we constantly try to break the boundaries of our containment. But a quarantine is only maintained as long as the pathogen remains isolated. If the pathogen attempts to breach the perimeter, the protocol changes. The entities outside the KBC Void are not ignoring us because they do not know we are here. They are ignoring us because they are waiting to see if we figure out how to open the heavy steel door. They are monitoring the radio static. They are watching the thermodynamic output of our star. They are evaluating the threat level of the specimen in the center of the slide. And the moment we actually figure out how to cross the 2 billion light-year gap, the observation phase ends, and the sterilization phase begins. Before that happens, you might want to leave a record of your existence. What is the one scientific anomaly that makes you realize we are trapped in an artificial enclosure? Put it in the comments below, assuming the firewall lets it through. If you want to continue examining the structural cracks in our containment zone, the playlist on your screen has more coordinates for you to obsess over. Stay quiet, and I will see you in the next one.